each other, well, get out, and then we don't want that.
Yeah.
We
I
want
Well,
everything to
don't
stay
like being
secret.
accused of knowing what I'm doing.
well, it is so it is important to understand
We don't want that.
when you're live because you never know whether a mic might be hot. The fact that there's a microphone there, it could be hot,
That was
but
something I learned when I was in school. If there's a microphone in the room, always assume that it's on and doing something.
yeah,
Oh
there's a lot
yeah.
of politicians that should remember that.
Yeah, you would
Someone
think.
tell Vic Mignogna that.
Yeah, but he knows he's live. Doing
You're
dumb things
Yeah,
fucking
anyway.
idiot.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, so let us know when we're live, and that way we can be all composed and ready and serious. Not so,
Yeah,
because
don't
we
worry.
want to be professional.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know. Don't worry about it. Oh my god. All right. We
I'm
got
so
like
happy
a
my move
minute.
is
Make sure
finally
you get your
done.
drinks.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I do.
No worries.
I do have a volcano
I
mug
finished my drink.
with stuff in
Ooh.
it.
You got a volcano mug with stuff in it, as opposed to a mug without stuff in
Yes.
it.
Well, there's stuff in the mug and stuff inside the mug.
Oh.
Ah.
Well, I maybe ask me about that on the show when the show starts.
Yeah,
I'll
okay,
explain
okay.
the whole
Alright.
why there's a.
Okay, we got like 10 seconds.
Okay, I'm getting ready. All right, be quiet.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Debate Hub. I am your host, Chesh, the Master Debater, and I am here for Volcanoes. It is actually Volcano Awareness Month. I found that out today. And I'm here with our lovely volcano experts, Maanyaa and Landon. Maanyaa and Landon, how are you guys
Yay.
doing today and this very weekend?
Me? Oh, I finally moved into my new house, so that's good. Pulled a couple of
Con-
muscles here and there, so that's even better. So,
yeah.
yeah, even laughing is painful right now.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Ow!
Oh
Yeah,
dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Well,
yeah. Pulled
congratulations
a special muscle right here on the neck.
on the movie being behind you. But are you unboxed, or is everything still in boxes?
Oh yeah, I'm unboxed. I didn't go to sleep till I unboxed. That's something that's with me. Like I don't know, it's my compulsive side. When once I get my stuff inside a house, I have to unbox it and put everything in its place before I crash into my bed. I will not sleep before that happens.
I I admire you. My algorithm was to not allow myself to clean a place until there were no boxes that had stuff in
Ah,
it. Right, right.
Oh.
Yeah, but I guess it depends
I
on your
do
side. But
everything in one go.
congratulations. And so you're unboxed. Guess what, folks? Maanyaa comes in
Yes.
boxes.
Yeah.
You can get it on Amazon, perhaps.
order
Uh-oh.
order your order your Amazon box of Maanya's down in the link in the description. All right, Landon, you were
Oh
telling
God.
before we started, you were telling me about some kind of volcano mug that you got going on there.
Yeah, this is volcano mug. Here is the thing. This is a from the Volcanoes National Park.
Definitely
Give it
not
to
the Illuminati. Got it.
no, and you can see these. You see these things in the mug
Oh.
itself. This is ash from Pele. So it's
Oh, that's super
part of
cool.
Kyoto volcano eruption stuff, and of course inside is a latte, which I could pull the lid down, but I wouldn't want to emulate somebody.
Oh God. Intrigue just sent me a game about a puzzle game about unpacking a life.
Oh God! Make sure
So
if you want to know about unpacking and cleaning your rooms, make sure to listen to Jordan Peterson's stupid book.
Oh
yeah,
no.
if you go to the
So
Volcano National Park, you can actually I think you can buy this mug in the gift shop. Now there's no fire in the fireplace.
Mhm.
Um, anyone guess why?
Chat, you got any guesses as to why Landon has not decided to light his house on fire today?
We'll see what
Is
the
it
chat
because
says.
it's too warm?
Give him a second. Give him a
Is it too
second.
warm?
Chat is asking to see
Or
the
are you
cast, Landon's cast form. So I can pull that up. Just a
Oh,
minute.
please.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That'll be
Shit.
amazing. I saw that
I
in the
watched
Discord and I was like,
on Twitch.
nice.
Yes.
And it is very volcano awareness related, so.
Yeah.
But so it was a lava type Pokemon, was it, Shish?
Well, I made it like a fire, maybe a fire water or fire grass type. But this is what it looks like.
Ooh, nice.
So I just thought it came out really cute. Look at him. It's a little.
Yes, it did.
So Landon doesn't have a pet. And so I couldn't make a pet for him because he doesn't have one. So I was like, so I can't turn your pet into a Pokemon. What am I going to do? Oh, I'll just make you a new Pokemon that's going to be like Volcano and Pele related. And then I struggled for about 20 minutes trying to think about what the hell that would be. And then it hit me like a bolt of lightning.
Well, actually, some people have, pets. Some people have pet rocks. I have pet volcanoes.
Yeah, so this is Landon.
Nice.
This is Pokemon Professor Landon explaining that he has discovered a new, Alolan version of cast form.
Nice.
And yes, and of course that the mask is appropriate because when you're near volcanoes, you want to be sure to be masked because of gases. Well,
Yes.
erupting volcanoes or active.
I like Landon's setup. Like he's sitting in a nice, comfy armchair beside a fireplace, with a coffee mug in his hand. That's a nice, cool setup, isn't it?
Landon is a straight up aesthetic right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Now,
right?
Now this is for this week. Next week, when there's people in the house, I won't be able to do it as much because I don't want to disrupt the house situation. And besides, it's getting warmer. We don't have Canada sending us all that cold air. We actually have warm air coming from Canada.
So people are guessing about your fireplace because you already know someone else is going to torch it. You ran out of gas.
Well, there's plenty of gas in the atmosphere, so that's not the case. But
please don't light the atmosphere on fire, Landon.
Yeah, that would be bad. Atmospheric gas burning is bad. Okay, but yes, you've seen other things that the fire runs in, but there's a reason why. The other question to see that the chat knows is that because I have this I have pet volcanoes. What are my 5 favorite volcanoes? I believe I've even said this on the air a couple times, but if you could, you might be able to figure out a couple of them. So
I'm a bad friend. I don't know.
but
I think so obviously one is Pele herself, isn't it? Right.
Well, she's the Hawaiian deity, but I'm talking about actual volcanoes, right? So you would say
like Kilauea.
Yes, Kilauea. And
Kilauea.
Sorry, I've been watching Hunter x Hunter. Don't mind me. Kilauea. Okay, that's one.
And
now Maanyaa, you gotta guess one.
Oh, come on. Mauna Loa? The next one?
yes, correct. Mauna Loa, yes, that's number 2.
Can we just say all of Hawaii?
Yes, and I'm referring. Well, that's actually most of Hawaii because it doesn't include Mauna Kea because it's not an erupting volcano. I mean, it's a nice mountain. I like the observatory there, but I'm talking about volcanoes, and they're on Earth. Just to be fair, because
I can't believe I can't believe I called the volcano Kilauea.
Yeah.
Kilauea is a character that has lightning powers, so he's like Kilauea as in like kilowatt, and it's like
and hint. One of the hints is that these are volcanoes I've actually visited that I know, know personally.
Is there a volcano in the Antarctica?
Yes.
So I'm guessing that one, but I don't know its name.
It's Mount Erebus.
Mount Erebus. So that's Did we get 4? I think we got 4 so far.
So you got 3, right?
You got 3.
Kilauea, Mauna Loa, Mount Erebus. Erebus was one of the more difficult ones
Ooh.
to get. So good for that.
I'm gonna guess that
Any chat guesses?
yeah, chat guessed Vesuvius.
Not
No, I mean
Vesuvius.
I've visited Vesuvius, but it's not one of my favorites. It's a nice volcano, but it's not my favorite. So and I don't detract from it, but I think if you're talking about it, it's not one of those as well.
Santorini is another guess.
I actually have not visited Santorini.
Mount St. Helens is another guess.
Yes, that is correct. That's one I've.
Hey.
By the way, yes.
Maanyaa, you're really slacking here.
Hey, come on! I guessed one. Come on.
Yes, you did very much. Yeah, and if you're by the way, if you're looking for Hawaiian, if you're looking for Hawaiian volcanoes to visit, I mean, Kilauea is obviously easy because of national park. Mauna Loa is just all over the place. It's hard to miss. But if you're going to Italy, Mount Stromboli is quite good, or Mount Etna, right? Etna's a bit more cranky sometimes, but those are two. But they're not my favorites. Those are two really good Italian volcanoes.
People are guessing Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier.
Rainier.
Well,
I can't read.
Mount Rainier is definitely in my top 10. That is correct. But I've not, and it is active, but it's not in the thing. I give the hint. It's that it is the volcano which shaped my early childhood, for which it was the first thing where someone said, "This is a volcano," and it's at a place where the national park had pictures of Kilauea eruptions to try to give people an idea about what happened just a few years ago.
Ooh. So. I see Mount Fuji in there. My mom said Pompeii, but I don't know if Pompeii is currently active. Is Pompeii active?
If it isn't, it's dormant. It might actually be. It might be considered active.
Ooh.
I don't know that.
Interesting.
Yeah, Etna is actually if you're looking for things to go spew, that's a good one. Stromboli is called the lighthouse of the Mediterranean because it's usually you can see the glow at night from it.
What's the national park one that the History Channel keeps asking you about?
Yellowstone.
Yeah.
It's actually not one of my. It's not in my top 10. Because a long ago caldera collapse that would take many years to come back again is there. Similar. It's similar to like for example, why wouldn't put Mount Mazama, which is now Crater Lake, on the list because it's kind of.
Is there one in South Africa?
There's dormant ones in South Africa, and actually Africa does have volcanoes, so they're not on my top 10.
Feline is asking Icelandic.
Yeah, though the Icelandic volcanoes are cranky volcanoes by the most part, right? They're actually
cranky.
I mean, they're deadly. They have really some particularly with ice and heat don't mix very well. That was why Mount Erebus was such a dangerous thing to get even near. But I was going with people who knew what they're doing. I would only approach Icelandic volcano with somebody who really knew what they're doing, who had a safety protocol and monitoring, and even then it would be risky.
Benton Feline also had guesses for why you don't have a fire. One of them was it needs cleaning, and the other one was because you have no firewood.
I do have firewood, although I have less firewood because of all these streams we've been doing. And I do have chimney sweep service in the middle of the month. But it's not in super need of cleaning. But by the way, if you have fireplace that you regularly use, you should have it swept out from the chimney. Otherwise, you will learn what a chimney fire is the hard way.
Oh, I remember when I was living with my my Chinese landlady back in Auckland. She adopted a cat, and my landlady went on a holiday for a few weeks, and she said, "Can you look after my cat while I'm gone?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." So one day he comes out from somewhere, and whenever I touch him, my hands go black. And I'm like, "What the hell is happening here?" So I take a warm like cloth and I wipe him out, like take that old thing out. I never realized what it was. It was until my landlady came back and said, "Oh, he found his way into the chimney," and I was like, "What the fuck?" So she had to board it up. She's like, "He's been like playing around in that suit." I'm like, "Yeah." Lucky him, he didn't like inhale it or something like that.
Well, what's the last one, Landon? I don't think we got it.
Mount Lassen.
Oh, and where's that one?
Lassen Volcano National Park is in the extreme southern part of the Cascades in the state of California, in the United States.
Since this is Volcano Awareness Month, how many volcanoes that are active are currently on the planet?
Oh, what is the number? That is a really good question. It's one thing I didn't actually check, but let's go and find out. From that, the list of active volcano count, according to one source, it's coming up here in a moment, is 44 with continuing eruptions, right? So we had 70 volcanoes erupt in 2022.
Oh, wow. 70 volcanoes
So
erupt, but 4 of them are considered
78 erupted in 2022. Right now, 44 have continuous eruptions right now.
Very cool. Do you have an idea of how many that might change to in 2023?
Well, the usual number is closer to 50. So we're kind of on a
downturn.
It's kind of slacking off a bit, but that was, by the way, that was of late December. So I don't know. There might be some new ones here. If I went back to the full looked at things, I might be able to find some more. So that and to some extent, it is an open question about what constitutes erupting. What's erupting? So
yeah, I see.
Right now, in Europe, Stromboli and Etna are actually erupting. Iceland has 2 volcanoes that are actually erupting.
Indonesia's on fire.
6 that are erupting. There are none in Alaska or North America. Mexico has 4. South America has 5. Antarctica, Mount Erebus is currently erupting. Yay. And of course, in the Pacific Ocean, there's one in Vanuatu that's erupting. Philippines have 4, etc. So see, they're kind of all over the place.
There's a whole lot going on in the world of volcanoes.
It is a question about, when is a volcano not erupting? What do we mean by a volcano is not erupting?
The great semantic debate of volcanology.
Well, because for example, during the great 35.5-year eruption of Kilauea from January 4th, 1984 to August 2018, there were a couple periods of time, for a couple days a week where you couldn't see lava, but it was still rumbling and gas was coming out and so forth. So sometimes it's hard to, when you're there, to say, okay, that's the end of the eruption, right? And many people ended up with egg in their face or stuff by saying, okay, Kilauea is done now because right? And some things would happen where you think, well, surely couldn't come back after that, and yet it would roar back to stop.
Surely.
So it's
volcanoes like, don't call me Shirley.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well said.
Oh, thanks. That's what I'm here for.
But it referenced airplane. So I think the thing is, it's kind of like the economy, and we know we're in a recession after the fact. But lots of people try to predict, saying, "Oh, it's recession is now because of this and this and this." You know, we're usually defined as the eruption ended, and they pick a date sort of after that time period. There's a quiet period time. So we are in a situation now where it appears that both Mauna and Kilauea are not erupting.
Does the frequency of volcanoes indicate anything about the age of the area?
It usually indicates its proximity to some sort of, usually either a hotspot upwelling from the mantle, or it is some tectonic rubbing, right? So plates rubbing against each other, plates breaking apart, or some upwelling, some hotspot, or some combination thereof is usually the case. And if you look at where the volcanoes are in the world, you find that if you go in here and let's look at this map here, showing, we find there's a bunch of volcanoes, right? Why are these volcanoes around here? Well, this is the plate boundary of the Pacific Plate, right? All along this spot. Hawaii, of course, is a hot spot. But if you go up into Alaska, this is a North American plate, continental plate collision there. There's the Tonga Islands, and again a plate rowing boundary. Even in Africa, right? Africa is kind of in the process. There's a Rift Valley where Africa is in the process of splitting, tearing in two, and so that's a split bit.
Wow.
Do you mind if we see Indonesia, since we just saw that there were so many going on there?
Let's see. Let's go up into Indonesia. So it's gonna show us. Why isn't it showing? This guy is not. It's not showing us the Indonesia. Or no, here it is over here. Let's go back into here. There we go.
Oh, okay.
There's Indonesia, right? All over the place. Philippines.
Oh, wow.
This is, again, you look at, this is a plate boundary here. There's a plate boundary here. There's a plate boundary here. Plate boundary here. Plate boundary here.
And does Indonesia have is this regular for them? Do they regularly have large numbers of volcanoes going off all the So this is part of their infrastructure. They're used to this.
Yeah, they're famous for it. So in addition to the 6 going, there's one that's sort of in the watch, and there's several that are on in the unrest thing. Same thing, even other places, Mexico, South America, like Chile, those places have Ecuador, South America has a pile of them, right? It's just that they're in different countries here, but all along that coast. So you look at, let's look back up into the South America thing, right? Again, you see there's piles of volcanoes, and oftentimes they're a little bit off. There's the crack. There's the plate crack. So you have a plate subducting underneath South American plate, and that causes you get volcanoes showing up. Here's again Pacific Plate and volcanoes for South America as an example. Even here's again another one of those Sandwich Islands, and it's currently in the watch phase, but there's another plate boundary there. I think even the one in Mount Everest in Antarctica is part of the southern plate boundary, right? This is the plate boundary which is the equivalent. You've heard of the Pacific Ring of Fire, right? All around the Pacific Ocean is that edge is lots of volcanoes, and we see the northern ones up in Alaska, mid ones in Indonesia. But New Zealand is, in fact, the whole island of New Zealand is because of volcanoes.
Right.
It's a very weak, and that crack continues down towards Erebus down here. So it's that same path. So it tend to be plate boundaries, but there are other places. Hawaii is a hot spot, and in Africa, it's an upwelling. There's a hot spot on upwelling in that area.
Do you think, Landon, that volcanoes tend to be more or less beneficial to like the local infrastructures or economics? Because like I imagine they bring in like a decent amount of tourism, but at a consequence.
Yeah.
Well, the having, for example, the North Island of New Zealand has incredibly rich soil, and that's because of its volcanic origins, right? That the volcanoes have made that area plus the climate to be incredibly productive, incredibly rich, right? If you want to get some good cheese, get some kiwi cheese from there, because their critters are fed on very nutrient grasses. Get a lot of flavorful stuff coming from New Zealand. So volcanoes can enrich the soil, and they also can, but in larger sense, volcanoes, in the greater scheme of things, put lots of water in the atmosphere. It is models of the Earth formation talked about the fact that a lot of our water and atmosphere came from a combination of smacking on the surface and volcanoes erupting and sending watery ground. In fact, a lot of what comes out of a volcano is water.
That makes sense. Like a lot of steam, a lot of gases, a lot of
yeah.
And then you'll get whatever goes into the air, and then it will rain down onto the rest of the area. That's really interesting. So I imagine like having a volcano relatively nearby you, as long as it's like as safe as you can be, you end up with like a really rich ecosystem.
Yes, and so you look at the thing around Mount Rainier and the Mount Olympus, right, in the rainforest. You can get volcanoes can stick up high points where they catch a lot of weather material and have very good climate conditions. So on the slopes of Mauna Loa, you have really rich place for growing coffee. If you've ever heard of Kona coffee, and you want to get pure Kona, not people that have the Kona brand, there's a line of coffee plantation on the essentially western slope of Mauna Loa that is actually incredibly rich. And in general, Hawaii, the Big Island, and the other islands as well, are incredibly rich in their plants, materials, and so forth. Again, because of all the volcanic soil. Now, while it's erupting, and the acid it puts out tends to be destructive, but if you're in a place where it rains, it's not a huge desert. Surprisingly short period of time after the devastation eruption, you have an explosion, right? Because the nutrients that puts out are incredibly rich, and some of the first things that start chomping away are bacteria going to town all these nutrients stuff that are there. So you look at some place like Mount St. Helens. It may have been hard to conceive of this place when it was May 18th, 1980, when we had the devastation blast. But now you look at it, it's an incredibly rich forest, and the thing come back. And the same thing, in Hawaii, we date some of the we can date lava flows in part by how fast the vegetation comes back. And,
okay.
And so what may seem to be it's a hot rocks cooling down from lava. Very, very quickly you get the bacteria beginning to eat away to the rock. We call it, think of it like rock molding, where they'll start to create a little bit of dust. A bird will drop a seed in it where you get a plant growing. Those plant roots will start to crack the rock, and eventually you get the little grasses, you get little bushes to developing a whole forest. And so you can look at stuff 5 years, 10 years down the line, and it's hard to conceive of the place hasn't been devastated. If you show someone a picture of lava pools. Now, if it continually erupts, like at the summit in the
Sure.
caldera of
Yeah.
Halimau in Kilauea, it's hard for someone to get a hold of.
We are
But,
going to have to take, I'm going to go and pull up on another day on another one of these. I'm going to go and grab the Legend of Zelda maps. And we're going to take a look at the big volcano in, well, what's it called? Where the Dodongo's cave is, where the Gorons live. The Death Mountain, I think is what it's called. And we'll take a look at like the surrounding area and see if the geography is like accurate to what you would see from an active volcano area.
Yeah.
Because that'll be super duper fun, and I want to know.
It'll be fun. Yeah. Also, we could at the same time talk about that movie, this series that's going on, and about that so-called volcanic eruption thing.
Oh, we can also talk about Mount Doom, and is like. Yes. How is Sauron feeding all of these orcs? Oh, with all the vegetation that Mount Doom is constantly providing. All that fertile land of Mordor.
That is more descriptive of the desolation plain of an actively erupting volcano. And in fact, you look at the Kilauea's map. If we could flip over here to air quality as an example, and look at the air quality maps, right? This is the prevailing wind, on Hawaii and particularly at Kilauea. The prevailing winds come from the northeast, which means the gas from Halimau blows, towards the southwest, and this area out here is a relatively barren desert because of all the acid that's coming out of this vent. So,
interesting.
So the downstream slope, I would say this is more Mount Doom-like, Mordor-like, around this area because it's so actively erupting, right? And same thing happened with Pu'o was an event where it was almost 35 years erupting, and so this region here is quite devastated. Once those gases stop, then life starts springing back, right? And it'll take time for it to come back, but it will eventually. And given the rich, you're in a rich oceanic environment, it will come back with a vengeance. It just takes time. If it's actively erupting or actively emitting, it's hard for that moment, but it can actually have positive impacts. So volcanoes from a agricultural point of view, from a life point of view, are disruptive while they're erupting, but after the eruption, the recovery is actually quite rapid.
That's so interesting. So, how does that, since we are shifting over to take a look at Pele, that's why you'll find sort of what is grown and what kind of vegetation and life that you do find on the Hawaiian Islands.
Yes, I mean it helps the fact that it's got such, it's one of the wettest places in the world in terms of rainfall. It's enormous amounts of rain go there, so that helps. But having rich soil the rain calls on, because if it was rain on just a slab of rock by itself, that wouldn't do it. It's the whole ecosystem that comes from what the volcanoes produce that are there. So rather than seeing a volcano as a harbinger of doom and destruction and death, it's a very important part of life, and it's very integral to Earth's biosphere as far as how developed and producing the rich bios, helping produce the rich biosphere they had. So I see, and because I see the older flows and how life is coming into the place, I view volcanoes as a positive thing, much like having a fire in a fireplace is positive. You just don't stick your head in the ashes, right? You're careful about the actual action, but the result is actually quite pleasing to the environment.
So why is your fire out, Landon?
Well, because I'm in sympathy with it appears that both Kilauea and Mauna Loa are not erupting.
Right? And what were our predictions? I'm pretty sure I predicted that it was just going to explode all over the place.
Yeah.
And I said it was going to be about the same, I think. Maanyaa, didn't you?
Yeah, I was like, I think so. I said that it won't. Or did you say that?
To go back, but we were talking about Kilauea and Mauna Loa. We thought that Mauna Loa would be kind of continue to go on at sort of a slow rate, but I think you thought it was going to go down. I thought it was about the same. I think Chesh thought it was going to be going up. But we all were admitting that we were doing a wild ass guess, not a.
Oh yeah. I don't think any of us were claiming any kind of actual knowledge.
Yes.
We don't have psychic power.
Yeah, and in fact, what happened several days after we made those predictions, both volcanoes stopped and appeared. I think the dates they're going to stop.
Yeah, they did.
And so that's a interesting. Now they're in a state now where you hear me saying it appears they stop erupting, right? There's a chance they could resurge, but and I'll show you why. But we're not expecting it. So I guess right now I'd be more surprised if Kilauea started erupting again, or Mauna Loa started erupting again soon.
That's going to be my prediction.
It will erupt eventually.
I'm going to predict every time that they're right. The end is nigh. They're going to explode real soon, eventually, and that's my prediction every time. It blows up. Go boom.
Yeah. Now, Hawaiian volcanoes tend to don't go boom. So that's a pretty historically risky prediction. Starting to erupt is a different story. But again, the eruptions tend to be relatively mild. They tend to they're not cranky volcanoes. In fact, you can get actually surprisingly close to active lava when they're emitting it. But as I say, it's right now they both appear to not be there. The amount of gas coming out is very low. However, let's look at Kilauea in its deforming data. Remember we talked about these deflation innovation events, and we see a couple things. Like we see this. Here's a tilt meter here at the summit. You see this giant spike. This is due to an earthquake. So we're seeing the island punctuated by rather sharp earthquakes. Now that can be because the summit is relaxing, and it's kind of it push out a bunch of lava or put it on the surface. We've got these voids, and it's kind of collapsing in or settling in. It also could be because magma's on the move. If you look underneath, you look at, for example, the last month, and you see all these deflation, right? This wiggling. You see that the downward slopes where the magma chamber, the magma's at the top that was outgassing, slows down, and it turns over and it flips up again, down, up, down, up. So these deflation.
And those are every 3 days?
It's about every 3 days or so. So it's not super fast, but it's regular. And this suggests that Kilauea is far from over in the longer period of time. The question becomes, well, then, is it erupting? Well, no, there's no lava on the surface right now that we can detect. And the amount of gases coming out are at trace amounts, normal background amounts.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat from Inkway saying, explosions are rare, so how often do volcanoes explode like Krakatoa? And I think what you're saying is it's rare for the volcanoes in Hawaii to explode.
Yes, because the basaltic, low silica, low sulfur, high temperature, very fluid lavas tend to rush out. You don't get the toothpaste crusty thing that has to be blown out.
Right.
Or the other thing is that volcanoes mostly when they boom are because they collapse in. Right, that they've been erupting, and there's a void, and they fall in each other, right? And you look at the big thing that happened in Tonga. That was a collapse of a pit where all of a sudden you had all this ocean water sitting on top of the magma chamber and the two exploded. So Krakatoa was relatively active, and it kind of depleted its ability to hold up, and it fell in on itself, and that falling in causes it to explode. That's where and volcanoes that are andesitic, not so they're lower temperature, so the lava is not moving, is not a fluid. They have sort of continental material, so they have more sulfur, it's kind of like rewarmed continental crusty bits. Those thick, tasty lavas tend to pop and break, and then those, moreover, those mountains, when the magma chamber sinks back down and creates a void, fall in and create very devastating eruptions.
A lot of it has to do with like consistency and the amount of pressure and the introduction of two different forces and temperatures coming together.
Yeah. So when you see a big pointy mountain, that tells you typically you're seeing very pasty lava, lower temperature. When you see Mauna Loa, they literally means long mountain, because remember we saw those very, very long, gentle slopes, because the lava, when it comes out in great volumes, very, very fluid, and just flows down almost like water. So those mountains. Now, it doesn't say that they can't explode. I mean, Hawaii had a very devastating that changed the political landscape of the whole Hawaiian island chain.
Right.
But they tend to not be. And
so they also tend to prove us wrong all the time. So
yes. Now there's a modifier to that, which is eruptions and ice eruptions and glacier eruptions and huge snowpacks are also a bad combination. But so you could have a Mount Rainier, even something where the lava doesn't reach the surface, but a hotspot develops. It melts water on the glacier on the side of the mountain. That hot water works its way down to the base of the glacier, where it can the pressure no longer holds it, and it blasts out a superheated blast called lahar, where you get superheated steam and ash and so forth coming out the bottom of it.
And what would that look like on the chart?
What would it look like from a deflation inflation?
Yeah, we're looking at the chart. So what would a blast like that look like if it were to show up on a chart like this?
Well, that would not really show up on the chart for a tilt meter necessarily, because again, you're talking about a volcanic activity heating the surface. So the lava doesn't even have to come up to the top. It just needs to be able to begin to melt the glacier on top of it. So Mount Baker, Mount Rainier are considered quite deadly because of their ability for the glaciers to be melt. And again, when you're so for example, in 1975, Mount Baker had a case where it became fairly rumbly. There was no lava reached the surface, but there was melt there, and people were worried about if it had enough glacier stuff to melt, and the heat coming from the rocks, even when it's not actively erupting, will cause the bottom of the glacier to melt. And if particularly if it's going down slope, that water works its way down towards the base of the glacier, where you no longer have the pressure to hold it, and all of a sudden it breaks free. All that weight of the pressure of the glacier and the steam just comes out in a big blast, and so you get this if you will, this avalanche, but it's called a lahar, of heated water, steam, mud, ash that comes out the bottom base of the glacier. Not even where we're warmed out, but down farther. So that's a different form of stuff. That's why it made getting up to Mount Erebus so difficult, because it has all these glaciers on it, and it's actually erupting. It's one of the largest lava lakes in the world.
Yeah, it sounds. Volcanology sounds like it seems simple on like a first glance, but it's one of those things, like the more you know about it, the more nuanced and the more complicated it gets.
Yeah. Yes, and in fact, volcanologists are probably horrified of the fact I just said, well, there's basaltic and andesitic, right? There's actually are many different types of lavas, and there's a whole diagram with phases and so forth. It's kind of like, you know, there's solid, liquid, gas, plasma, different states of matter. Well, there's different types of lava that has different behaviors, and there are eruptions where what happens is not the lava doesn't come, water works its way down. Like take White Island in New Zealand. That's a case where the rain works its way down to the near the top of the magma chamber, flashes of steam, and it's the steam explosion, not the volcanic lava explosion that can be quite devastating. And so the thermal events. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's just really fascinating because there's just so much to it, and because they're all around the world, they're all different. They are all under different pressures. They're all under different environments, and so all those environments change everything about them.
And I think it's important for people to understand that volcanoes are a very natural occurrence on a planet. We have a very volcanic active planet, and there are several dozen, sometimes up to 50 plus erupting right now. Right now it's around 40, around 43 or so. So volcanoes are regular occurrence, just like it's raining. And they also have, can have devastating impacts in the environment. Also have very beneficial impacts in the environment, just like a hurricane or a monsoon can have devastation where it has, but the rain itself is not a bad thing. Same thing with volcanoes. It's part of the process of Earth, and probably if Earth was not geologically active, have a very different biosphere as a result. So if anything you come away with, I mentioned before, volcanoes are a regular occurrence. They're not harbingers of doom. Volcanoes, the event can be devastating, but the result can be actually quite lush and flourishing for life and beneficial. So volcanoes aren't a bad thing. They're not a thing to fear. Now, just like a fire pit can be enjoyed and warm you, and you don't stick your hand in the hot coals.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the effects that you give can be quite beneficial. So you can cook with it over. Same sort of thing with volcanoes. So my enthusiasm of volcanoes is not because I have some sadistic, I want place to just be destroyed. It is actually a rich part of what makes this planet a wonderful place.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat that says, so there are indicators. So are there indicators or specifics as to what type of eruption is possible? Like whether or not there can be pyroclasts or just lava flow or an explosion.
Yes, and that's some of it is history, some of it is the geology of the area that can tell you about that sort of thing. You can look at the mountains themselves, the shape of the mountain. It will give you some indication if you have nothing else to see whether you're seeing a shield-like volcano, or you're seeing a Strombolian type eruption, or are you seeing an andesitic, peaky thing. That you can get some indications of that. Just hints
I'm
of that
pretty sure the History Channel told me aliens did that, though.
Yes. So looking more at so when I say that Kilo is certainly not even close to being dormant. When you see this sort of deflation of events happening at its summit, you're seeing that magma chamber is turning over. Not huge amounts, but it's a fairly reasonable amount of deflation and inflation that's happening on a regular basis. So that tells you, these turnovers tell you there's energy coming up through underneath into the system, and it's far from its last eruption. Look at this other thing. This is the distance across the summit. And notice this thing is continuing to climb. Even though the eruption has stopped, it is continuing to expand. The mountain is continuing to stretch. There's pressure coming underneath. that's continuing to expand this mountain. And so one might say that this current state is a temporary pause,
Right.
or a brief period of time between eruptions.
So a mountain like Mount Everest would have been, would that have been volcanic at some point?
No, Everest is a tectonic folding thing. India,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, decided to take off from its connection to Antarctica.
India was
and
like, I'm done
spent-
here. I'm leaving.
Oh yeah, bye.
and it didn't know where the brakes were, and slammed in Asia. And slamming in Asia caused a couple of things. First of all, it caused an eruption that is extraordinary in terms of the Dedekind traps that came from it, where we have evidence that when the plates collided and you had that volcanic stuff, roughly around 66 million years ago,
Right.
about the same time as the asteroid impactor, and we see that it had lava flows that were close to around 600, 700 meters thick. The lava flow itself was that thick. No, that's in feet around
Wow.
2,000 feet. It was enormous.
Thick with two C's.
Enormous amount of lava that came out of that thing, and that had a fairly devastating effect on the biosphere of that day. That plus the asteroid impactor made the current food pyramid that the dinosaurs were at the top of collapse, but it didn't kill it off. Again, when these things happen, it isn't the end of life as you know it, although you might think of that. It turns into the Indian subcontinent has a rich farmlands as a result of that collision, and the Himalayas, right? That the crumple zone between India and Asia produced the Himalayas, some of the most beautiful places on earth. I mean, you go to Kashmir, and it's just extraordinary in beauty and heights and views and so forth there. So it created a great place of beauty. The weather that comes from that down in the continent, it had a profound impact on agriculture and life there. So a devastating event, collision of continents, turned into an enormous place. And I do not believe the Indian culture would be as it is if it wasn't for India running into Asia.
Yeah.
Do you think
got a lot of influence from other from around the countries? So we had like links to the Middle East, and then into China and further there, and then from Middle East to Europe. So it was India was a gateway at one point between China and Middle East and Europe.
Yeah.
So the Silk Route
trade route,
goes through India. Yeah.
But
and now,
but in and of
what
itself
was the role
is
of women?
rich. I mean,
Sorry, that's an old joke from a while ago on the channel. I apologize. I couldn't help it. I'm sorry.
But you know, India itself, the mineral riches and wealth of India, a lot of it came from India, right? And all the stuff. I mean, the Brits certainly enjoy those carbon plumes that created those amazing diamonds that Big Ears is going to use when he pretends to be appointed by God to rule the former United Kingdom.
Yes.
I think it's coming up in a couple months.
Now, how do you
the wealth of India comes from the geography of India, both and the food and the agriculture. The wealth of that region is in part because of the geology. So that event that you would think would destroy life as we know it, and in fact probably did a big number to help collapse the reign of the dinosaurs, paved way for the mammals, and then later on paved way to the riches that are that India is so celebrated for. But again, I feel I'm explaining something to someone who lived there and is there or has been there for a while. So
I was
I
just
mean,
like, I like it when people are fascinated with India. I'm like, yeah, keep on talking. I'm listening to you. It's good to like listen about your country from another person's perspective, like how they view as the country. Because when you are in the country and you see the good also, but you see a lot of negativity a lot of times, especially with the population we have. So it's good once in a while for someone else to come in and say, "Your country is great, man. I love it," and then you're like, "Yeah, cool, thanks."
Little bit of ego boost.
Yeah,
yes, I
it's
think
not
so
at
many.
all bad.
I do have a question though, and first
Sure.
I'm gonna ask Landon to get in frame again.
Oh, sorry,
Eh.
sorry. All right,
um,
let me put this out here.
just shuffle over.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
so how do you tell when you're looking at a mountain? How do you tell between whether or not, because it is Volcano Awareness Month, we can dive into a little bit about how to recognize what was a volcano or what was plate tectonics, and
Well,
how those things are
um,
related.
well, certainly for something that's merely mountain folding, you're going to see fault lines and breaks. You'll see strata, of something like, for example, the Sierra Nevadas of California, or in places in the Alps where you see essentially the folding of mountains. You see the strata being folded or broken and shifts there. That's kind of the sign that you might be dealing with essentially crumpling of material. Whereas you start to begin to see in volcanic regions, so you'll see much more sedimentary and metamorphic type rocks. Whereas the igneous rocks that come from essentially the volcanic process, are more recombinant volcanic rich areas. Now, you can have situations where the volcanism is in the long past, distant past. You can see mounds of stuff, but these are extinct volcanoes, and you'll find fields like that. There are so so whether or not you're dealing with an active volcano is more a matter of the effects, but finding these igneous rocks, finding the terrain that has these sort of mound lumps that often are like old cinder cones, um, and even more so when you go to places like in the Southwest, you see all those rock spires, right? You're oftentimes seeing the core of an old volcano. The Looney Tunes, Roadrunner Coyote, and they're going around and seeing all those rock piles of things there. Someone didn't just stick there and stick rocks because they're bored. Oftentimes, some of those places are from an old core of volcano where the rest of the soft material rolled away, and what's left is the plug that came behind. So you can see some ancient volcanoes as well. So knowing the region, knowing the tectonic region, general geology can give you and seeing whether or not you're having sedimentary metamorphic. Metamorphic is just typically rocks that have been cooked and pressurized and
And
transformed.
this would fall under like the scientific heading of geology.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes. And it is the case that you'll see mountain folding and volcanoes in the mixed, right? When you saw
Right.
along South America at edge, I mean, the Andes Mountains are another of those crumple zone type things. Plus the continent subducting, so you have a continent that's being pushed down, and that tends to generate heat and have material comes up the great
Yeah, I
volcanic
imagine you
volcano.
can't have like such a big event like with what you were describing earlier with India without there being some kind of magma or lava or some kind of
Yes,
eruption just from the amount of pressure and the amount of friction
sure,
going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So back to say with Kilauea, we see that even though the eruption ended, it still is expanding, right? It still hasn't recovered from the end of its 35-year eruption. It's still not even back to that stage yet. Um, it just is not. There is not enough material to have gases escape out the vents, let alone push magma up to become lava.
Yeah, there's no signs of it necessarily slowing down either. It seems to be
Yes, yeah.
continuing on
So
its
it's a very
merry way.
Yeah, I mean, it would go into dormant stage if we saw the magma chamber begin to cool, right? If what's happening is that you don't have an there isn't much of an energy supply to replenish, and the magma chamber is losing more energy than is coming up inside it, right? So you have a net loss, and it's beginning to cool and contract. And by the way, when magma chambers cool and contract, it sometimes has little liquid bits that get squeezed and popped out. So if you look at something like Mauna Kea, the other big mountain in Hawaii, you see little bumps, like almost like little zits, right? Because what happened was it's in dormant stage, its magma chamber contracting, and it squeezes out some stuff, and you get little pops of tiny, would have been tiny little cinder cones that would erupt and a fountain, have a little local spot there, pile up, and then stop.
Now, Chad is asking you to explain all of this on the flat Earth model.
Well, take your distortion and warp from an R3 to R2 perspective, and have a lot more imagination than one probably is useful. So,
more imagination than is useful.
But yes, right. If the flat Earth were saying no, this is science fiction, and we're imagining Flatland or a Terry Pratchett novel thing with crazy fun stuff, that'd be fine.
I do love me some Terry Pratchett. How can you not like Terry Pratchett?
It is good fun stuff. So I'll mention the case for stuff. If we look at earthquakes here, Kilauea and Mauna Loa are still Kilauea Summit is still lots of earthquakes. It's like the last 7 days. Pile of earthquakes there, and also this region down here that we've talked about, and I'm gonna show you about this a little bit later on. We see Mauna Loa almost no earthquakes in the last 7 days.
Yes.
There's a couple of tiny here on the side, but there we had leading up to we don't think it's going to erupt, but we don't think soon, and it surprised us. We had piles and piles of earthquakes here at the summit. That seems to be gone. If there are more earthquakes the last 7 days at Mauna Kea, which is a dormant volcano, than it was in near the summit of Mauna Loa.
Now, is it possible that one of these dormant volcanoes will become active due to the slowdown of an eruption?
It would require some fairly significant change in the plumbing underneath, right? The hotspot is way away from here.
Right.
So, and again, dormancy defined as the magma chamber is contracting. Now, it's possible for dormant volcanoes to have small eruptions as they kind of like the last bit of outgassing gets squeezed out to the stage where it's extinct. Extinct means that the magma chamber has frozen over, and until some dramatic thing happens again, like tectonic collisions, it's gone. So Mauna Kea is considered dormant, where Mauna Loa, Hualalai are still active. If you look at the webcams, you'll see out here. Like, let's look at the webcam on this thing, and Hawaii has had these are snapshots from old, so they have to go and refresh. So I'm going to get the stuff here. As you can see, there's a lot of thermal stuff over here. You can see it's still rock is still quite hot.
Yeah. You can see the gases there.
Yeah, but and you can see it's sort of cooling. This is Kilauea. There's Gilligan's Island. It's still there floating, but now it's kind of in a congealed set of stuff. You can see the top up at the summit of Mauna Loa. There was a lot of lava that here's the top, right, and so we had this was once sort of an active lava flow area, but it's now pretty quiet. It's congealing. for that. But again, remember, this was this pit was almost 800 meters deep at one point,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's filled about 2/3 of the way up. So
yeah,
when
it looks higher than when we looked at it before. So if you go back to one of
Yeah.
our other videos and you see from like a month or two
Yeah.
ago and look at where we were looking at this, you would see a stark contrast in like the depth.
Yeah, and we have to say from the deformation area, the magma chamber still has material moving into it, it's still cycling, and the mountain is expanding. So there's pressure under here, just not enough for it to go to stuff start oozing out on the surface.
Right.
Now, the longer this cools, the harder it's going to be, and the more effort it's going to take for lava to come back to the spot. It might come back. It might find a different spot to come out, or when in the past when Kilauea has had a pause, one of your pause, and erupts again, there's some crack that's occurred because of contracting, and magma works its way up through the crack, and you get a huge fountain, right? Basically, you get a squirter out the top, and it reinvigorates again. Or it could decide that there's too much material here, and it will head down one of the spines for erupting again.
Landon, you can't just like so passively and flippantly call something a squirter on the top.
Oh God.
You can't just do that. That's illegal.
Okay. I rescind. So Mauna Loa is also not erupting. The sulfur dioxide emissions, gas emissions, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide are now down to background levels. I mean, there's fumaroles happening. There still are little events. You'd have sort of Yellowstone-like thingies happening with stuff coming out. Gas is there, but it's nothing anywhere near where it was when it's erupting. When you look at deformation data, you see that Mauna Loa is still cycling. In fact, it's cycling pretty on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent.
It is. So that magma chamber has energy coming into it, just not enough for it to break the surface and start flowing. We saw from the tilt stuff that this was the big eruption thing where everything was going wonky, but now the eruption stopped, and it's doing this sort of cycling pattern again. Look at the distance. So there are two spots on the set. There's this spot and this spot, right? The distance and that distance there is what you're seeing. So you have two different data points.
Look, I can move my mouse around on top of Lana's mouth to confuse everybody.
Yeah, oh, no, don't do
your mouse is there. If we look at the distance across the caldera, right? This was the this is when it was going along and it went bang, right? This is when the magma chamber was very near the surface, and it said, okay, that rock that's on top of the magma surface is nowhere near to hold the pressure in it, and that's where it sort of it oozed out, it popped, but it has settled back, right? There the material rushed down the mountain, and now it's slowly building up again. From a larger point of view, let's look at this 5-year period. It had been sort of gradually going up, and we saw these little dips there and thought, was it erupting there? Is it erupting there? No. Keep going, no. And then all of a sudden it went
bang,
boom, right? Yeah. And then this drop is because we saw all those wonderful fountains, right? The pressure was being alleviated because the magma was forcing its way to the surface down the slope and coming out in that wonderful flow. And it stopped, the eruption stopped, and now it's re-expanding again. So does that mean that it will start again soon? Possible, where soon is,
soon is relative. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so if we might see another event like this in 5 to 10 to 15 years.
Well, historically, Mauna Loa averages about 7 years per eruption. That does not mean it erupts every 7 years. It means
Right.
if you look over a long period of time, that's kind of the rate of stuff. The fact that the magma chamber is still quite active in deflation inflation events, the fact that it's still expanding like this suggests that there's still enough, there's a lot of pressure underneath. The question is there enough pressure to break to the surface? Unlike Kilauea, Mauna Loa, because its magma chamber is so huge compared to the thickness of the crust, it only takes a couple hours to go from I'm under here to I'm on top, right? It rapidly comes, and then it gushes out, as Mauna Loa is famous for. But
yeah, I imagine you actually end up in some kind of situation where we might see a sooner eruption than like that would be before 7 years, but that's not necessarily going to inherently change the average because that's not how math works.
Yes. And we know, again, you say, well, how do you know about a mountain? When you look at the shape of the mountain and you see, this mountain with its very gentle slopes, you have to envision you have these great flood of lava coming out, coating it faster than the huge rain rode away. You look at some place like the opposite side, Kauai, which is one of the wettest places in the world.
That's what she said.
It's very, very peaked because that extinct volcano is eroded down to almost nothing. So it's just a little nub there. And so, but you can't say, oh, if this line gets up to that top, it'll break again, because you don't know that doesn't give you conditions that cause the cracks, that cause the pressure to push the magma up and become lava.
Right, and the conditions have changed. After there's been an eruption, the conditions are not inherently the same as there were before the eruption happened.
Exactly. And we're not seeing all the earthquakes. We don't see a pile of earthquakes up there. If I saw lots of shallow earthquakes, I would say, oh, it's just a pause and it's ready to pop tomorrow. Now, that being said, Pele could come around and say, well, let me show what I think of your theory.
Yeah.
People who hypothesize what Pele's going to do, Pele goes, that sounds like one of those human-splaining things.
That's cute. That's cute, honey. That's cute, honey. Let me show you how it's done. Hold my beer.
You don't know me. Yes. I like to imagine, like, once in a while she's drunk and is just like, you don't know me. You don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I'm not drunk.
Then the next time a human explains the 100th level of Mario, I'm going to blow.
The next time. I've had that happen to me before. Like, I've had those days.
There's this guy called Mario, and he goes through all these obstacles and like 100 levels, and then finally when he reaches the point where he's supposed to get the princess, he is told that the princess is in another castle, and it happens all over again. So there are 100 levels, and for some reason girls don't know that. I don't know why.
Yes, I'm sure Pele didn't know that. So people were saying that the Saddle Road. Here's the map. By the way, this is the map of the lava of the eruption. Right? Let's zoom back just a little bit. The map showing the eruption, and you see here in terms of kilometers.
Modern art, like Pele decided to do some modern art on the surface of this planet. Like, here you go.
So remember, it started. So here we're seeing with the rift. Here's the top of the mountain right here, and the two rifts. And it started flooding at the top. It spilled this way for a while, and then it spilled this way, and then basically this became the weak point, and the magma chamber, then coming to the top and draining down, started coming out that fissure, and it poured down the road, and people were saying, okay, it's going to cut off the Saddle Road, and we don't know whether it's going to go towards the Kailakona area or the Hilo area, blah blah blah. And Pele said, I'm done. I stopped, right? This went from November 27th to December 11th.
Mm-hmm.
That was this period. Even though it it was an eruption following the longest recorded pause in human history. Its eruption wasn't very long, right? And some people expressed disappointment that they're there. In fact, there's a bunch of people
really?
who were planning to Hawaii for Christmas, New Year's to watch the lava show and so forth, and then stopped, right? And I think Pele wrote them a message back saying, "Oh, sorry you feel that way."
Let me humble you a bit.
I'm going home. I'm leaving. I'm done
you
with this.
You don't get a date with me this Christmas or New Year.
I'm being bullied.
I'm on my own. You're on your own. We're not going on a date.
I'm being bullied today. What is this?
So there are, in terms of the 2-week thing, there was an eruption over here. I mean, an earthquake over here. A couple of quakes, but in fact, we just recently had a very shallow quake. That was probably the most sizable one in a couple of days. Right here's there, but you have to be careful that, because oftentimes when an eruption is ongoing, it's putting pressure on rock, pushing it out of place, and after the eruption finishes, you no longer have that pressure, and it's settling. Right. You also see an old lava flow that was originally maybe somewhat smooth, because it now contracts and cracks. You'll actually hear out there. It's in fact, if you go near the flow of this map, you'll hear what sounds like breaking glass, because you really have silicates glass
right
on top contracting at uneven rates. That the top is cooling different than the inside and starts to contract and crack and so forth.
I imagine that'd be amazing, like Foley work for people who like record just sounds. Oh, that'd be so cool.
It's beautiful.
Also, by the way, I am now also getting bullied by chat. Just to be fair, to be clear, this has become bully chest day.
Oh,
what is this? It's because my prediction was so wrong. What did I do today?
Because I remember wrong. But again, you see, here's some pictures showing you the channel. Look at that lava channel that came out of there, that spot, right? It has created some good stuff. There's obviously some gas that's coming out near the top, so it still is cooling. But the channels it created down the line have some spectacular scenery.
The photography is so cool. Yeah.
These are from older times, but right now, it's this is what used to be going down like.
Inkboy said, Pele, please deposit all letters and written complaints into the mouth of the volcano. Thank you. And Steve Areno and Icarus are asking for volcano ASMR.
Yes, well, we do have, there's plenty of it's called, we call it volcano porn, where essentially you have lots of lava movies. This particular one, because it was so well documented and recorded with multiple cameras, we had a number of really great movies here. I mean, look at.
Oh, that looks so cool. There's not going to be audio to these, by the way, for us, because
there is audio.
Wow. Well, you have to send
audio.
You have to send it to me if you want outside audio.
Okay. Let me do that because.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Is that sped up or is it like the regular speed?
That was regular speed.
That's regular speed. Oh my fucking lord, that's beautiful.
You want me to send it to you in Discord?
Hey, look, it's us forever. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can send it to me in Discord.
Go over here too.
Here, I'll do that. Well, protect everybody's privacy.
Yes, because you want to know that it's us, for example.
Oh my god, it's us talking to us during this. Wow, who'd have thought? That never happens. Okay.
Scratch someone from the live chat.
I'll get a really good.
Scratch someone on phone and said, Pele's suggestion box is even better than a paper shredder.
There we go. Just turn the volume up a little bit. Let me do.
Another one I want to send it. I'm going to send you a second one, so you have two of them
Cool.
there. So there's your ASMR stuff. So you can go and play that.
Do, 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 do. Have you met Toad? He's Princess Peach's PA. Between you and me. There we go. Oop. All right. There it is. There should be audio now for you guys as well. Hopefully it works. Fingers crossed. Let's go.
Oh, yes.
Let's turn it down just a little bit.
Wow.
The crackling. How much of that is wind?
I think so. A lot of it is wind, but
there's also it's that thermal stuff is creating all kinds of wind currents off of it.
Right.
Plus, remember, you've got think about what it would be like if you had boulders tumbling out of a chute, avalanche down the mountain. That's what you're seeing. It just had to be liquid phase.
You can hear the crackling. Like, you can hear it going off in the back.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So yes, we have lots of things, and so we'll occasion, as I say, it's called, we call it volcano porn. It is basically saying you want, pictures of cool lava stuff, and unlike, for example, the eruptions that occurred in 1969, 1970, 74, where it was like considered high tech to get a TV camera crew to record footage and put it on the nightly news. This stuff, we have live cameras in multiple angles, being adaptive to see this material. So these eruptions, these minor eruptions, are much more well documented, and there's a huge amount of footage. And the USGS is going to come back with sort of the best of, I think a pretty good best of set there. So there are folks that are going to, and by the time you go back to the park, they'll have video stuff you can buy.
And how fast do you think that's moving?
I would say that's probably approaching 40 kilometers an hour.
That's pretty quick. Not outrunning that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it moved. I mean, it went halfway down the slope in only about a day or so. It moved pretty far in that set. So there's a bunch of videos there. I will send you.
Yeah, here's some of the. I'll just put these in the chat as well, so that way chat can go and check these out if they're interested. I'll add them to the description down below. So if you guys want to see what we were looking at, you can absolutely see that for yourself.
Yeah.
Landon, you stopped screen sharing.
Discord decided to redo itself. So let me go back.
That's okay.
Let me go share your screen. It is.
How fast was Usain Bolt? And he was only fast for 100 meters. Yeah, fair enough. You guys are probably hearing my Discord now in the background. There we go.
So, so one thing that people have speculated is the connection between Maanyaa erupting and Kilauea erupting. And there's this paper that I will send you in Discord. You should put this into the thing. That was a fairly extensive paper talking about the magmatic, that is magma web between Hawaii, and it talks about this. Remember, we saw lots of earthquakes around Kilauea summit, and some up in the Mauna Loa area, but we also have that other pile. Remember when you see the earthquake piles, there's a whole pile of earthquakes here. Well, what they did is they looked at the earthquake stuff and said there's a hot spot coming up here where it builds this sort of a pool, and then it has kind of two paths out of it, one going to Kilauea and one going to Mauna Loa.
Right.
And also this is the what used to be called Loihi, now is Kamala'ihua Kanaloa, right? That this is the seamount underneath there.
Oh, okay.
So we have these three spots. So here's the seamount here. This is this big earthquake swarm that's at the corner. And again, when we looked at things such as when we looked at the earthquake sets of stuff, what we saw, where is Hawaii? There it is. Remember, we see Kilauea is pretty active, but we have this large pile here of these earthquakes that are deep. Here's the summit of Mauna Loa, here's the summit of Kilauea, and here's this rich area. Here's the seamount, right? If you look back in Hawaii, right, we go back to come here. There it is. There's the Loihi seamount out here.
So, as this is going on and as this is happening over the course of long periods of time, we're looking at Hawaii expanding and moving and eroding behind itself.
Yes, and that was amazing about the Kilauea is that you can come back a year later and see the coastline has changed. Things actually move. I mean
so if you're buying real estate,
well, Hawaiian law says that if you have former beachfront property that becomes not beachfront because of the volcano, the public owns the new stuff. You have right to the stuff underneath, but the new lava stuff is public land.
I think that's a really smart law.
I think so too. I think it's a cool thing about Hawaii. So you see here's the deep pits from plume from deeper in the mantle. You look at the depths, right?
So that's hell down there, yeah.
And then these are the rising stuff. We have the rising stuff towards Mauna Loa, rising stuff to Kilauea, and of course to Loihi. And so that's what you're seeing these.
That's purgatory.
And so it's not surprising that Mauna Loa and Kilauea ended erupting almost at the same time.
Oh.
And it's possible because again they're kind of being fed indirectly by the same source, the same hotspot. This is the pressure of the hotspot underneath that rises to these spots, and so what we see now, this line here is this fault line along spine. This is the Kilauea spine here. Kilauea spine, the same thing as Mauna Loa spine that way. But one of the models says that if this is indeed the case, it was difficult for the magma to work its pressure all the way up to the top of Mauna Loa when Kilauea was bleeding off pressure. Not that the two are directly connected between each other, but they share a common root, much deeper, which is the hotspot.
That's fascinating. So you have and they're so far apart.
Yes, because distance-wise, this is a pretty big distance.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat about that law you mentioned. Do they keep mining rights? You mentioned something about that they would still own underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like for example, the Hilton built a sort of hotel right on the edge just outside of the national park, here in this region here underneath what was Pu'o Bend, and Pele wiped that out, and in fact put some beachfront property and land in front of it. The hotel was not allowed to rebuild on top of the new spot, and they essentially cashed out on their insurance and went away. It was not something that people there was a number of Hawaiians that didn't like having a resort hotel like that. It was controversial. So
fascinating.
Yeah, so I guess finishing with Volcano Awareness Month.
Yeah.
You look here at the Pacific Northwest with the threat categories, and we have this line of volcanoes.
Oh, Mount St. Helens is there again.
Yep. And you see that the plate is farther to the west.
Right.
So it's not, the volcanoes don't happen to be at the crack. They happen to be the place where the Pacific plate or Atlantic plate is being pushed underneath the North American plate. The combination of friction and the actions cause the line to the side to be very volcanic.
Obligatory fuck Nestle, by the way. But yeah, no, it's fascinating. There is another question in the chat that I saw. Sorry, just let me.
Here's Lassen, by the way.
Yeah, don't go.
There's Mount Shasta and Long Valley Caldera. This is probably one of the places somewhere between I would guess Long Valley might be a caldera type eruption. If you talk about a so-called supervolcano, the Long Valley caldera is more likely to happen before Yellowstone does. But there's here's San Francisco. There's Lassen. Mount Shasta is also a very active, deadly volcano, and of course St. Helens, Rainier, Glacier Peak, Mount Baker. Crater Lake is considered very high, although I think they're overstating. I think that Mount Mazama, that Crater Lake is dormant. I think that should be a high or very high, but that's just an opinion.
Yeah, we covered a lot today. I do have a question for Landon from the chat, and it is about how you approach a conversation with someone who doesn't think a volcanoes exists and live in Hawaii.
Huh? What? Oh, no. What the fuck? Even Landon's scratching his head. He's like, what?
I'm just trying to figure out what in the world. I mean,
let that one sink in.
I did encounter somebody saying on the news that he thought there's more than one moon. That was his big revelation.
Oh.
Well, yeah, depends on the planet you're referring to, isn't it?
There is more than one moon that
Earth.
Exists. Yeah.
Around Earth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm just taking a Mickey out of it.
Because he was saying, well, I was driving this way and the moon was there, and then I turned the corner and the moon was over there, and I think that's just to me proof that there's more than one Earth.
This guy has no sense of direction. Noted. Okay.
Oh no! Maybe our how the optics work, with our biological eyes, when dealing with celestial bodies as massive as moon. Oh yeah. I was there and I looked at there and then I turned around, it was there too.
I'm baffled. I'm just baffled by that nobody else has noticed this other moon yet.
Well,
Yeah,
some
where
people
is it?
might
On
have
a
heard
colonizer.
that dumpster fire person. I'll let them say who it was, but you can see that video. It was on a sports commentary. I'll just give you that. So in terms of danger stuff, I mean, these are the various threat scores for things, and a lot of stuff. Alaska tends to be Hawaii and Alaska. These are sort of the biggies, right? From threat scores. And you look at the where it is and what's around it. And these are sort of the ones of most concern. And if you're going to prioritize monitoring, yes, in Oregon.
Where are they at? Oh, okay. Oregon.
Three Sisters is, I believe.
I think Landon dodged the question.
Three Sisters is down here. Here it is. Middle of Oregon.
Gotcha.
Can you point out a city to me so I have a better idea of where we're at?
Here's Portland. Here's Seattle. Here's Olympia. Here's Volcanoes.
Oh, there's Canada in the top right corner or left corner.
Yeah. Now, Canada does not have very much in the way of volcanic stuff. It does have one that it was 1904. Was it we saw up in they're up in British Columbia. So this was USGS, so they're focusing on US threats.
Oh yeah. That's totally fine. I am not offended by America ignoring us. That's preferred, actually.
Yes. So Alaska has a lot of
North America
stuff where it's cautionary. There's lots of cautionary things of Alaska.
That makes sense.
And Crater Lake, Clear Lake, for example, has a lot of thermal stuff here, but British Columbia, I guess for Canada, the volcanic stuff now would be in British Columbia on the coast, a bit farther north. So if we looked at the map down here, we're talking about this region. Up here would be where it's had volcanoes, although they're so remote that they're not I would not put them on a danger list. I mean, well, put it this way, the one that erupted in 1904, I believe, in Canada, no one ever actually reported it having erupted. We just see evidence that it did erupt.
Is Yellowstone on that list somewhere, like way at the bottom? Did they even make the list?
Yeah, that's oh, there it is.
15, yes. There's a high there.
Ooh.
Interesting. Yeah.
But it's probably, and I would say it's moderate, but the other hand, it has danger because of the thermal hot spring. I mean, the things that they can have are unexpected geysers and so forth.
Yeah, because like the threat level doesn't inherently mean eruption. The threat level is just, is it dangerous to the local population for what it's capable of doing currently? So that could mean gas. That could mean like leakage. That could mean earthquakes. It could mean a lot of different things. And when you've got something as populated as Yellowstone, it's probably always going to be in between moderate and high, just because the number of people there is too great.
Yes. And so you see that it has these tables that define, this thing goes into definitions of what these things are. But here's Alaska. You see all those volcanoes. Alaska is
volcanic. Is also on fire.
Yes. Has lots and lots of stuff here. So here's here is the one spot in Canada that might have a moderate thing would be here, little spots.
We're just poking in on everything, just like a little bit over here, a little bit from down here. Hello.
As it gets out farther, more gentle stuff here. In terms of the actual the peninsula stuff, is maps there, and.
Yeah, you could have a remote volcano be far more active and far more ferocious, but still be considered lower on the list because there is no threat, because there's nobody there to be threatened.
Yeah. And there's something, I mean, within this vicinity, the Canadian volcano that erupted is somewhere in this region here, but there's very few people here. Yeah. Again, it was 120 years ago, and no one noticed it until about 70 years ago that something had erupted.
The Canadian shield is also a little thick.
Yeah, they're a bit more polite in its spot. for the in that things. Of course, Hawaii has Kilauea and Mauna Loa. Walalai is at the high because it's near Kona. It did erupt in 1801. It still is active, but it's not very active. Haleakala on Maui is in the moderate. It did erupt, last 1,000 years, but not recent. Of course, in the Maanyaa Islands, there's a bunch of ones, some which are varying in its degree of stuff.
That's a lot.
American Samoa are pretty low because it's sort of farther away from things. So you look at the volcanic eruption stuff and how they talk about how they calculate these things, calculate the threats. So just because it has a high threat doesn't mean that it's going to erupt soon.
Right.
And so take a look at that paper.
There's something called risk, and then there's called something hazard, right? So there's a hazard present, that's the volcano, and the level of risk will be based on how close it is to a settlement or a powerhouse, yada yada yada, and the risk goes higher as closer we get to people, property, infrastructure, or stuff that can be damaged by it if it erupts. So that's how you calculate the risk.
And you're part of your profession. Your daytime job deals with distinguishing between risk and threat, right?
Risk management, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so threat or a hazard, you would say. Hazard is like a threat. That's what you say. And risk is what's the level of devastation or the harm it will cause if the hazard does, end in an incident or a near miss or an event. Yeah. So that's what.
Yeah, and so you look at the History Channel, the same people that brought you that ancient alien stuff. The response there for those folks is, the Yellowstone caldera probably won't have eruption issues for the next 50,000 years or more. Yellowstone is a hazard in part because it's a very populated area from the national park.
Right.
And people go to the geysers area. And that's a similar thing in New Zealand. There's some wonderful geyser areas there that are a hazard because people go there, right? If people left them alone.
Question from the chat, and we do need to start wrapping up soon, but Feline asked, could you ask Landon what was the biggest eruption in the last 40 to 50 years, and if it would be the Tonga eruption from a year ago?
Yeah, with regards to big eruption, Tonga certainly is up there. I'm going to go and look at if you look at the volcano explosivity index, and we look at that, largest, eruptions, let's say, in the 21st century, Tonga was definitely the biggest in terms of
number 5
volcanic explosive index, number 5, right? So we sort by that. We see that there's a bunch of 4s, but 5, also the one in Chile, was also pretty.
2011, 2012 began on June 4th, 2011, caused major flight disruptions across the southern hemisphere, including South America, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, ejected an estimated 1 kilometer cubed of material into the atmosphere.
It was a pretty big one.
Tonga says the explosive submarine eruption began on December 20th, 2021, with the largest explosion occurring on January 15th, 2022. Satellite measurements recorded an eruption column of at least 30,000 meters, or 98,000 feet if you're a loser, into the atmosphere. The explosion was 100 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, because America always compares everything to the whatever. Anyway, and it was her. We're just gonna always remind everyone that we blew the shit out of Japan. By we,
think
I
so.
mean not me. I'm Canadian.
Yeah. I think so. It's just as a precaution, also like to compare the scales. Like, oh, do you want that level of destruction? The destruction, it's already happening,
It's a
or
common thing that people understand. I know.
yeah.
And was heard as far
It
as
is
Fairbanks,
probably
Alaska.
okay. So for Canadians, it's probably about 1,000 times more than a Halifax explosion.
How much maple syrup would I... Alaska, nearly 10,000 kilometers
If you
away.
don't know what the Halifax explosion is, look it up in history. It's an
Fluctuations in air pressure were recorded all over the world as a pressure wave has fully circled the world several times. 2 people were killed in Peru by a 2-meter tsunami wave. A British woman was found to have been killed by the tsunami in Tonga. This is currently the largest eruption of the 21st century with an estimated 9.5 kilometers cubed, I don't know why I keep saying squared, of ejecta and a deepening of the caldera floor by at least 700 meters.
Yeah, so it blew a hole as deep as what happened to the collapse of Kilauea, but it did it all at one time.
Right.
And my weather station out here recorded the shock wave 3 times as it circled the globe from Tonga. We saw it in there. But there were several other stuff of things going on in Russia, Papua New Guinea, Ecuador, Alaska, Chile, Russia, Iceland, Indonesia, Eritrea. That was in Africa. These are 4s that were fairly big, right? So, so some of you see like this one here, was a volcano that first erupted in. Last time it was in 1640. Initial eruption produced an ash plume of 17 kilometers or 55,000 feet for those metrically challenged. Winds carried plumes east when the Maanyaa Mountains into Argentina. Plume drifted over the Atlantic Ocean, visible on satellite for hundreds of kilometers. Right, so lesser stuff. But if you look at, for example, if you look at the plume height, it's certainly Tonga at 58 kilometers was the tallest we've ever seen in
next one being
history. 30, 26. Now, if you looked at terms of the year, and you go to say, you look at stuff, Mauna Loa rated as sort of a 0, right? It was just
well, it's rated as question mark.
Yeah. Now, if you talk about fatalities,
yep.
These
Guatemala,
things show you
Indonesia,
right? Yeah, where Republic, you have things. These are things where the eruptions didn't have much in the way of ejecta, but it killed people.
Right. So it kind of depends on. There's lots of things to measure by about like when you say what was the most devastating volcano of our time. Well, what do you mean? Devastating in what capacity?
Yeah. I mean, White Island's only of EIA2, where it didn't have even a measurable plume in the air, but it killed 22 people.
Right.
Right. But it was a popular tourist center, so
and
it wasn't
killed
very big.
22 out of 47 possible people it could have killed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a high KDA ratio. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So 5 killed. Now what it doesn't show, there's a number of people that are deaf. And much like what happened with the Halifax explosion, there are a number of people that were blind, deaf, or both from the event. Similar thing of Polynesians that are near the area that, while they survived the eruption, were severely injured.
Right.
So it kind of depends on the area there. So I will put this link in the description as well, because I think it's important for you to.
Yeah, I'll make sure that gets added.
And stuff. So a little bit of volcano awareness, but again, volcanoes are a very natural process. They're a very common process. They're very integral to the cycle of life.
Yeah.
It just don't try to swim in lavas, and you're not very successful. Try to stay away from the ones that get cranky, particularly the ones that implode. Those big explosions were were collapses of volcanoes.
Be
So,
respectful.
yes, take the respectful. So when I was watching the lava lake at Halemaumau in August 2018, I saw it drop almost a kilometer in a matter of a couple hours. I packed up my bags and I left the island.
Bye.
Because now
I'm fast as fuck, boy.
It's like on a little animation of Landon seeing this happen and then just nope, 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 nope.
I didn't pull a Cartman. I just did a see ya type of thing. But again, that was we backed off because we didn't know if the sudden drain was going to have a catastrophic collapse like a Tonga-like thing or a Krakatoa-like thing. It turned out that Pele was rather gentle, and it had about every 20 hours it averaged about a magnitude 5+ earthquake, and the thing just sort of slowly shook its way down until it created the pit. And it took several months to do that. So it collapsed, produced a lot of energy, but it didn't happen all at once. It kind of settled down. It was that way. It was relatively dangerous. Now it was the case. It was throwing out refrigerator-sized boulders, 10 kilometers in the air when it was sometimes clearing its vent. So big near it was not a good idea, and that's where they decided to close down the park. But soon after it stopped, the clearing thing kind of settled out, and they knew what was not going to collapse under them. The park opened up limited to its display. While it was still erupting, you could actually go to overlook and look down into the pit and see the lava there. Was quite a good sight. It'll happen again, and I would be shocked if Kilauea and/or Mauna Loa didn't erupt sometime this decade. I would find that would be extraordinarily weird. I think, given how active it is, Kilauea is more likely to erupt than Mauna Loa, just from the things. Would it start erupting tomorrow? It would be slightly eye-raising, but not surprising, given how active it is, how much expanding it is. When it stopped in 2018, after 35 years, Kilauea took almost a year and a half before it erupted again. In fact, I was actually on a phone call with Red Eye, the person from Australia, allegedly, and talking. I was looking at the cameras, and all of a sudden I went to one camera, and it looked like it was daylight, going like, well, that's odd. And my original thought was, oh, this camera hasn't updated since today. It's like some link had stopped. Let me started looking, investigating, and saying, has it link broken? And I said, oh, wait a minute, this is live. Oh, wait a minute, that's lava.
Oh shit.
Yep.
Started spurting out, and that's when I had to call up a person who was on watch. They were asleep. They had watched a movie and had fallen asleep. And I said, I hate to wake you,
buddy,
but check outside. Oh, gotta go.
So what's our prediction then? Do you think? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. An exercise in futility.
The prediction, right? That's a great movie, by the way. So I guess you guys ask us, what kind of prediction do you want? Are you talking about for what? Right, the next week, the next month?
Well, I feel like we do the next month because that's when we're going to be back to talk again, right?
Okay, so we'll do it in a month. So the question is, what will the state of volcanoes be like a month from now?
Yeah. I'm gonna guess explosions. I like explosions. I'm a fan of explosions.
I'm gonna say it's gonna be like a little bit of activity, but not something to be concerned about.
So and
like it's coming down.
Do you want to distinguish between Malu and Kilauea? Which one? Both? One or the other?
It was Kilauea that erupted, so for Kilauea, I think it's gonna be like moderate or even minor. It's gonna be there, but it's not going to be like explosions that Shesh is saying. For
Yeah.
the other one, I think same. Yeah, it'll just stay like.
Yeah. So
Just
check when
like
you
he'll be like,
said
yeah, okay,
explosions,
whatever.
right? Are,
Yep.
are you going
Yeah,
to say
Shesh said explosions.
explode or yeah? You went. Chess went big boom.
I want big boom. Big boom.
Boom,
I
a boom.
so I think what we'll see is elevated gas levels coming out at Halemaumau and Kilauea, right? And we'll continue to see elevated earthquakes at the summit. And I think we will not see much in the way of quakes at the summit of Mauna Loa. So I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that the Mauna Loa will be quiet as it is now. Just the cooling. They might have some contraction earthquakes, but those really don't count. Not much, no measurable gas coming out at the Mauna Loa summit or along the fissures. Whereas I think Kilauea will see elevated gas levels. I think we'll see Kilauea continue to expand. I think we'll see Mauna Loa continue to expand, but Mauna Loa expanding has got much more expansion capability than the Kilauea. So I think a month from now, we'll begin to see some elevated gas levels inside Halemaumau. We'll continue to see the sort of the rumbling of quakes along the way. I would be surprised if there is lava coming out in the caldera summit. And I think Mauna Loa would be sort of its same state of not much with gas and only quakes that are kind of contracting, settling stuff.
That sounds. I think Landon is probably going to be right.
We'll see how wrong we are for other things. And I don't know. In people in the chat want to type in your predictions as to what do you think a month from now Kilauea will be doing and Mauna Loa will be doing.
Absolutely.
I would be shocked if Kilauea's expansion started contracting. I would be shocked if Kilauea's deflation events were flatlined.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would be shocked if you had a big earthquake swarm at the top of Mauna Loa again. But Pele is going to do what Pele does. So
Pele's going to do what Pele does. On the other hand, we're going to be back tomorrow with world news. So if something does happen tomorrow, we'll be talking about it, and we've got a lot to cover tomorrow. It's going to be
oh boy,
quite the interesting night.
Yeah, there's some things going on in places that are not volcanic, but are
volatile. That's
I definitely recommend bringing a drink or two. Tomorrow is going to be the Unnamed Tavern, where we will be joined by Landon, Maanyaa, Dapper Dinosaur, and myself. It is starting, if I remember correctly, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We also have, this is going to be Maanya's last one for a little while, because she's going to be away. So everybody's got to come and say goodbye to Maanyaa for a little while, because she's taken off. We're being abandoned.
Well, are you visiting black holes, or because you finished neutron star booping and now you're doing black holes?
Yeah, no, I'm starting with the black holes. I'm done with the neutron stars. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You've upped your game. So I put a link for an invite to our favorite universe server. We're on that channel. If you go there, you'll see a big science news thing, which has lots of detailed stuff, science stuff for a long time. There's cooking and eating. Although I do more stuff on Chesh's channel. On the food channel, I promise I'm going to make another pizza. So watch that.
Ooh, we're going to make another pizza. That was a group effort last
medical
time.
Medical news, history, disaster news, and a news feed. Where a news feed is kind of like DFF, except by real politicians.
Yep.
Oh, that was funny. Like that poor guy McCarthy. Like he's going for like one after another like round of voting, and he's still not getting it. And it's like Nancy Pelosi's like, buddy, dream on. I'm never gonna allow you to have that seat.
Yo, save it for tomorrow.
Yeah, but
I
it's
did, by the
fascinating.
way.
It's like...
Yes, go ahead.
You did, by the way, Landon? Go ahead.
I'm done.
We lost her audio.
I'm done.
What?
Huh?
Okay. The cabbage I bought to model Liz Truss's premiership. Of course, the cabbage lasts longer. I finally decided to toss out the cabbage because the cabbage was looking a little bit ratty. So
yikes. All right.
So
well, join us tomorrow for more of this. Go ahead, Landon.
So please subscribe to the Jess's channel. She does lots of fun, cool stuff. Also, Dapper tomorrow as well. They've got cool stuff. If you click on that join link, I'll see you and I'll elevate you to a science fan where you can get access to. Good content.
If you go tell them where it came from. That Discord that I linked in the chat right there is Landon's Discord. Go feel free to check out there. There is access to my Discord. A portion of my Discord is free to access, but if you are a member or a Patreon, you get all of the nonsense that goes on in there, and that includes the food stuff with Landon. So links for that are down below. If you were able to join us today, if you're already a member, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're interested in more of this stuff, please subscribe. We've got a ton going on this month. Most of it has been pre-scheduled, so you can actually take a look to see what we are going to be looking at, and oh boy, is there some juicy nonsense down the line.
Anything to do with atheism?
Anything to do with atheism? Yes, actually. Not this Tuesday coming up. Next Tuesday, not the 10th, it'll be 7 days later, the 17th, that Tuesday, there is one that I'm looking at where somebody did a debunk of Aron Ra that I'm going to be looking at. So I don't know how much that's going to really have to do with atheism, whereas how much is actually going to just be philosophy, but we'll see. Otherwise, there's not a whole ton of atheist stuff that goes on this channel.
Okay.
I do actually. No, I do. I lied. On the 10th, next Tuesday, I do have one. I have a bunch of Christians coming on to review the atheist online community and how they feel about this nonsense.
Trish having all the fun when I'm away. Damn it, Trish.
Yep.
Seriously.
Yep.
Maybe I will be able to view it from the black hole that I'm going to boop.
We're gonna find out if my stream may make it far and if it's powerful enough to make it through a black hole.
Yeah.
And Maanyaa, I hope that in your travels and your tribulations, that other people's lack of planning does not impact your enjoyment of events.
Fingers crossed. I was the most unplanned person in the new year. Like last minute in December, I decided, I'm gonna break my lease and I'm gonna move to a new property just before I'm supposed to travel to India. I'm like, what was I thinking? Like the most unplanned, unpredicted thing,
chaos.
Thing that someone
Pure
can do
chaos.
on New Year.
Yeah.
All right.
Risk was a hazard.
Let's get out of here. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Come on by. Make sure you bring your friends. Like and share and all that good shiz. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See how wrong we are.
Why did that do that? Go away. What?
I have no idea.